Hi, and welcome to Night Clerk Radio. This is episode 57, Rethinking the Summer Jam. As my co-host Birk came up with the title for that. You come up with most of the titles, to be fair.
I do, for better or for worse.
Yeah, this is our second Summer Jam episode. Last year we did some hypnagogic stuff like Desert Sands Feels Warm at Night. And this year we're going to do something a little different. Some different summer jams that are different from last year. I was going to do future funk, but I found something else a little more appropriate, and yeah, it'll be fun. Think about the summer jams in like vaporwave and haunted music in general, is they're not really associated with each other that much.
Sure. Yeah, it's a little different.
Yeah. You could argue that future funk is, but vaporwave is really good music to chill out to and just like something to relax to. And of course, this episode we're going to be looking at lo-fi and something completely new for us too. So we should just dive into it.
Sure. Yeah, I think the topics we want to cover are probably better discussed in the context of the music.
So that was Easy Now by Mo Anando, and that was from the Chillhop Essentials Summer 2021 album, which is a compilation of 27 tracks and a bunch of different artists. This is from the Chillhop music record label. And the reason we did last year's Summer Essentials album is because the 2022 album is not yet due. Well, it's coming out June 1st, which is a little too late for this episode, but I thought this was a good, it's representative of the label, of the kind of music they do. And I wanted to use this album as a way to talk about Chillhop music because it is certainly a success story of the lo-fi music scene. Ever since probably 5 or 6 years ago, maybe I'm thinking around, well, probably longer than that, probably like 2014, maybe. The lo-fi girls started appearing on YouTube streams, and then it kind of spread from there, and it's become this whole scene with, the YouTube 24/7 streams, Spotify streams and playlists, and now albums and record labels. Lo-fi Girls one, which was formerly called Chilled Cow, but now Chillhop is the other, probably the second biggest record label. It's kind of hard to tell, but they're the one with the logo of a anthropomorphic raccoon with a hoodie, and the raccoon's just kind of chilling, listening to music with cute little earbuds or headphones. And yeah, it's music I listen to a lot, and it is very popular around the world. And it is still embraces the lo-fi aesthetic of, distortion and static and crackle in a lot of the tracks, but it is been alternately described as very chill and happy and relaxed music, and also as very the successor to Muzak. This is the musical wallpaper. So yeah, there's a lot to talk about with this music. Guess we should talk about this album first. Birk, just overall, what'd you think?
It's lo-fi. I don't know, like
lo-fi hip-hop to be specific.
Lo-fi hip-hop. You're right. Sorry. Yeah. It's interesting because when we first started talking about doing this, I didn't realize, just because I don't pay attention to this stuff, that Chillhop is like a whole label. I thought it was just a genre description. So at first when I was listening to it, I was like, isn't this just lo-fi hip-hop? Like, what are we doing here? What makes this Chillhop? And it turns out it's because it's released by Chillhop. So solved one mystery. I've already learned so much this episode. Yeah,
there's other record labels that I think this is done for SEO reasons, to distinguish themselves so people can find Chillhop in particular. There's another record label called Jazz Hop, and then I think there's one called Dream Hop. So you can sense a theme here. And then, of
Noticing.
course, there's the original Lo-Fi Girl, formerly Chillhop.
Right.
So these record labels, I think they sort of like, they don't call themselves Lo-Fi Hip-Hop anymore, even though they are Lo-Fi Hip-Hop as a genre, as a way to distinguish themselves and to brand themselves, SEO and all that. But they all have the same sort of aesthetic of coffee shop or studying, very chill kind of vibes. Like they've embraced the aesthetic of the looping GIF, but they, instead of stealing scenes from Studio Gilby movies, they've paid artists to create looping animations for their streams. In Chillhop's case, there's like, the raccoons walking around or sipping coffee at a coffee shop, or for this record. And I should talk that Chillhop does this seasonal album release where they do there's a spring, summer, fall, and winter for each year. And it's always like 25 or more tracks, 20 to 30 tracks of music from various artists. So it's kind of like their big thing. And they only sell it for like $1 on Bandcamp, or like €1. And they always put out like just a mix of it. So as a separate like video on YouTube. And so it's like one of their big things. And they sell record or vinyl of it usually, and prints of the custom artwork they have for each album. Like this one, it features like the raccoon lounging at a pool at a nice house, overlooking a cliff, and you can see a lake below. And it's a very nice chill scene.
Have you listened to any of the other ones very much?
Oh yeah. I actually listened to pretty much all of them because
it's good work music.
Yeah, it's good work music. It's also music I use for the Mix 6. I use little clips of it as segue music between segments. So I am on their Bandcamp email list, so I know about all their releases. They also do like EPs and singles and smaller albums of individual artists they like. And they also do a lot of merch. They have a clothing line with like hoodies and hats and stuff like that. And art prints. So it's a company with about 20 people in it. They're based in Rotterdam, the Netherlands. On one hand, oh wow, they really made it. They're doing well. They're making, they have looks like a very slick operation that's very well, like they're getting a lot of artists out and getting a lot of music out to the people. Obviously for me, this is total speculation, but I have no idea. I have no evidence, but like, it's a record label. Are they treating their artists fairly? Because lo-fi hip-hop producers and artists tend to use the same kind of anonymity that vaporwave artists use. They often go by their online monikers, or they don't have much on their bios. Like several of the artists on this particular album are like called Oddfish, Misha, Xander. I'm just looking at the artists now, and so it's like Evil Needle. I just hope they're getting a good deal from Chillhop.
Yeah. Do we know if they're real?
And that's the other thing. I don't know. Like maybe these are just pseudonyms. Like it's hard to find information on a lot of these Chillhop artists, on lo-fi artists in general.
Because even within like vaporwave, there's of course anonymity, but also one person releases lots of projects under different names or anything of that nature. And then for me, as a personal bias, once I know it kind of becomes like an industry, like I know you're doing this because you figured out how to heavily monetize it. I mean, what's stopping me from having like 3 dudes or anybody, not necessarily dudes, making Chillhop and then just be like, label that track Xander. And that's just, I don't know much about the industry. They may be actually people who are very well known or have very good like SoundClouds or Bandcamps of their own.
Yeah. I think it's a mix.
Yeah. I'm just sort of conjecturing.
Yeah. I think some of that does happen. I'm sure that does happen. It's just, lo-fi music has exploded in popularity. And I think so obviously with all that popularity, there's a lot of artists who are like, oh, wait, I can not just cash in on it, but I can get some, fame and better reputation if I do this. And people go to where the action is. And right now the action is in part in lo-fi music. So it's hard to tell. That was something that would be worth discussing in future episodes to really dive more in depth to. Like I haven't really studied the behind the scenes stuff very much. I did find some things, which is like, I did a search for just Chillhop music controversy, just see if there was any controversy.
Oh boy.
Yeah. And I found a Reddit discussion on the Lofi Hip-Hop subreddit about how Chillhop is stale or not creative because, in part, the argument goes Chillhop as a record label does not want samples. They don't want to deal with that. Now, there are valid commercial reasons and legal reasons to do that, as well as artistic reasons. So, like, obviously, if you put samples into your music, then it's not going to be able to be streamed on YouTube and Spotify and other big platforms without getting slammed with, copyright ID bullshit. So that is kind of a problem. And so I can understand a record label's stance of like, no, don't sample anything. We're not going to use any music that has any kind of samples in it. But the artists are saying, well, Lofi Hip-Hop comes from trip hop, which is true.
Yep.
Lofi, as we've discussed in our Toonami episode, owes so much to Nujabes, J Dilla, and other trip hop artists. And guess what? Trip hop artists love to sample, and they sampled really creatively. So this artist on the subreddit was basically saying, well, Chillhop is limiting creativity by not letting us sample. And so I thought that was a real interesting, it's kind of the opposite of the sort of argument we've seen with, like, for example, barber beats. It's like, sampling, sometimes good, sometimes maybe not good. It's hard to say.
Yeah, it's obviously about application, right? So I think in our barber beats episode called The Limits of Plunderphonics, which wasn't necessarily anti-barber beats, but just trying to discuss at what point are you just republishing other people's music. That's basically the gist of the episode. You should listen to it to find out more because we talk about it for a long time. But no samples, while, like you said, commercially understandable, in anything with any like hip hop in its, I don't know, genome or ancestry, that's like even just cutting out little drum beats or like little synth leads and stuff. I mean, sampling even now is such a huge integral part of music. So I guess I'm thinking of just earlier this week or last week, at time of recording, new Kendrick Lamar track dropped, The Hard Part 5, first one in like 5 years, and an album's coming out. And one of the things people are hyped about is that it has like a really famous Marvin Gaye sample in it, which they know that he had to like work really hard to get. So it's still like an integral part of the genre. So I do agree that if you look at the Plunderphonics ethos of like, well, the whole point is that music itself, it can be an instrument. Then yeah, you're basically telling your artist to not use an instrument.
Yeah.
So I get it. Yeah.
Like I said, it's complicated. There's no easy solution. There's also the fact that like the no sampling could also include like, oh, I bought a pack of samples to use for my music. It's royalty free. It's stock, but because another artist used this same stock sample of like a drum loop or whatever, then that gets content ID'd. And so even though I actually have this sample cleared because I specifically bought it is a valid, legit, legal thing, I can't upload, I can't, sell this thing to Chillhop because they say no samples. So like, yeah. So the record label, it's very interesting. It's worth looking into more depth at some point, and like the lo-fi scene in general, because again, it's a huge burgeoning thing and it owes so much to so many haunted music genres. And like, it's weird how Plunderphonics and like the aesthetic of the lo-fi has gone from the underground of like the 70s and 80s to like, hey, lo-fi music is in part popular because you can play it anywhere. And people like it, like, teachers use it in the classrooms. Extreme athletes listen to it, in between, extreme sports, like it's music that's not going to offend anybody with lyrics because it doesn't have lyrics. It's going to fit in when you're talking because the sort of what the style of the music doesn't really, you can talk over it easily.
Uninvasive.
So, yeah, exactly. Unobtrusive. And I would say, actually, I mean, it's still worthy music to discuss because there is still some emotionality to it. There is this weird sense to it because, as a personal anecdote, I do freelance work as well. And last month I was working on a freelance book project where I was laying out someone else's book. And this book was a passion project of this person who, this woman's, the author, her husband's father died in World War II. And so her husband never met his father. And the book was this collection of letters about the father's time serving as a soldier in World War II. And there was hundreds of letters, all of them transcribed with some historical notes about where he went and what he did and what these acronyms meant and that kind of thing. And the author sent me these photos, family photos, to scan in and put in the book. And I started scanning and photoshopping these photos to prepare them for the book while listening to lo-fi music and seeing these happy, the soldier holding up his infant son and like all the family together. And then, the wedding photos and things like that. And then like to the sort of like sweet and slightly sentimental and nostalgic kind of lo-fi music. I was like, oh, I know how that story ends. That guy's smiling, but he's never coming home again. And like, that child grew up without knowing his father and like had a tough time growing up as a kid. And like, I see this link to decades and decades ago, these people I've never met, and something about it. It wasn't like, it just like, I felt, it wasn't sadness, but like, I don't know, like a greater awareness of everything. I don't know. I had to like step away for a bit and take a walk. It's like, I don't know what this makes me feel. And so that might be I don't know that that's going to be a universal thing. I don't know how often people are going to be editing photos of people that have died decades ago. And like, yeah, but
if you are,
yeah. So in the right circumstances, lo-fi music can like create this emotional response, even though it is meant to be sort of unobtrusive. So I just wanted to share that because again, like, yeah, there's something to lo-fi music. I think it's not just because it's convenient, but because there is something there.
Yeah, it's interesting. Of the two albums we're doing today, this is definitely one that's closer to being like haunted, nostalgic, melancholy of the two.
Yeah.
And like to talk about the music a bit.
Yeah. We should probably talk about the album.
It's fine. I mean, I don't have a lot to say per track, but to go off what you were talking about, I do think that one of the benefits of that non-intrusive aspect of the music is that your mind is free to wander while you're listening without really losing track of the music. Maybe it's like just keeps some little back part of your brain just stimulated enough that you can think better or more clearly. And you do have these surface thoughts that can rise up, maybe partially influenced by a lot of the like somber, melancholic sort of chord choices and general like timbre and pace. Nothing is too upbeat. Nothing's too exciting. So I definitely get the appeal of it. I think it's very good. I say party, but I mean like late 30s party of like 6 people, not like a college party.
Yeah, it's not a
like,
rager. Yeah.
No, it's not Kager music. But like if we ever went on a road trip, I think it's good road trip music because it keeps moving. I think you move through it very quickly because every track is kind of like 3 minutes. So it helps time move along in one way or another, which is sort of how I felt while listening to it.
Yeah.
And that's not like an insult. Like I'm not saying it's like forgettable or ignorable or anything, but it does help you along.
Yeah. I mean, and there's a lot of like variety in the tracks too, in terms of like instrumentation and technique. Let's play a sample from Crown by Hans. And what I like about this is it has this like crowd sounds in it, with these like kind of unusual like vocals sort of building up into getting into this like nice beat. So yeah, I really like that build up, and I like the use of the field recordings. It was a track that kind of made me know, like, what? Okay, that's interesting. That's neat. But yeah, there's some more happy tracks, and there's a couple other tracks with like field recording kind of things, like Silver Glen Track 22 has some nice crickets and birds, which is a very summer sound. Yeah, you're right about like the sort of like sadness to some of the tracks. Like the last track has that really slow piano. Like, yeah,
especially the opening few chords. Like because for a second, it sounds so much like the piano on the track "Passenger Seat" by Death Cab for Cutie, which is like a very, very somber little piano song.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing too, is also like the Reddit post I read was from 4 years ago, 2018 to for the interests of disclosure. Maybe they've changed their policies then. And there's always a chance that they made an exception for a particular track or that someone snuck a sample in.
It's not a sample. It's just the opening sound very similar, but it does have sort of an issue that I do have with some of this music is when they do something a little different or a little interesting. It's only for like 30 or 40 seconds. And then they're back to something approximating lo-fi, back into the formula. If anything, I would just love for some of these artists to just run with the weird stuff because that's what interests me the most as like having to sit and listen to something for a week. Yeah. But I totally get that that's not what they're writing it for and that's not the goal.
Yeah, exactly. I think I did see some other discussions about like how lo-fi music started as music by producers for other producers. And then as it got more popular, people started going more back to, the formula to be safer for more wide stream appeal. So like there were people sort of lamenting this watering down, as they saw it, of lo-fi music. So it would be more easily consumed by the masses, the unwashed masses. So that's an interesting discussion to have at some point about like the mainstreamification of lo-fi. But that is an entirely different episode.
For sure.
Yeah, this is a fun album. It's like I said, you can listen to the whole thing. It's like it's 72 minutes long, I think, about on YouTube, or you can get the whole album for like €1 on Bandcamp. Chillhop's worth checking out as a label or as a stream. Like I said, it's good music to just have on.
Absolutely. So that was a bit from track 3, Sentient Ocean, off our second album, World of Light by Tikkun Olam. So very different from what we were just listening to. But I picked, I think, the track that's the easiest transition between what this album offers and what the Chillhop one does. So this is an album that I just sort of stumbled across. I was just going through Bandcamp stuff, looking for music tagged or kind of suggesting summary stuff, and just as I do so often these days, I just kind of liked the cover, and it's not hard to like listen to an album at least once while I'm working. And I liked it, and I wanted to make Ross listen to it. So the artist Tikkun Olam is interesting. It's taken from a Jewish phrase, which is really open to interpretation apparently, but roughly means like overcoming idols or like behaving compassionately and beneficially. So that's where that comes from. The band itself is a Toronto-based duo, which I think is like an instrumentalist and a producer type deal. It's modern music, so they call themselves a multi-instrumentalist and a sound sculptor. So, I'm also in a field where we make up titles, so I don't blame them. Yeah, so they're from Toronto. This was released on the Jewel Garden label, which is out of Tulsa. And I just really liked it. So it's this odd blend of jazz, experimental, electronica, weird synths, breakbeat.
Or drum and bass. It's kind of
drum and bass, breakbeat stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really interesting. And I guess also the reason I picked it is, and we talked about this on the last year's Summer Jam episode, so we don't have to like rehash the whole conversation. But I guess I have a lot of trouble thinking about music as summery, or like what that means to me. And I guess I use this podcast to kind of process it, because so much of the standard summer jam fare is like, we always talk about like synthwave, outrun, future funk, that type of stuff, like upbeat party music almost, or like really energetic. And, you know, summer's like my least energetic season. I don't like the heat. I tend to just want to sit inside and listen to weird records, which is how I picked both of my summer jams. It's just the sleepy season for me.
That's fair. Siesta. Yeah.
So I totally get that if you listen to any of the samples or the album itself and you're like, what is that idiot talking about? This is not summer music at all. It's my summer music.
I mean, I think definitely categorizes summer music for me as well. Like some of this electric guitar like reminds me of Santana. Like it's fucking wild as shit, especially like track 1 towards the end. Like that has a lot of energy to it. And like track 2. Yeah. Really good build up, really good sax, like feels like a montage of a big city scene. Like,
okay. So that kind of leans into my second point, is like, I think summer stuff for me is just about being excited by it, because I don't really have a summer anymore. Like, you know, again, I'm kind of repeating points from our last episode, but summer doesn't mean anything. I don't have a summer vacation anymore. I have to work all summer. I don't have time off or anything. But summer traditionally is like the exciting season, right? Like you're done with school, you go on vacations if you can, or you at least do something. You go somewhere, you do something different. It's a break from your normal social rut of going to school and stuff, hopefully. So I don't know. I think then summer music is music. Santana is an interesting example. That's just exciting to listen to. That is different. And that's mostly what I got out of this album. Like it very much feels like Colin Fisher, who's the multi-instrumentalist, he's listed in the liner notes, is also doing a lot of these solos. Whereas the other person, Ilse Crivel, is doing the production work. So that's probably a lot of the drums, the mixing, arranging it, putting it all together. But I think a lot of it is just this Colin Fisher having fun and just like, I'm just going to do awesome jazz and guitar solos for 6 minutes. And we're going to put it together into something it's going to be fun to listen to. And that's sort of the vibe I got for most of the album.
I think for summer with me, it's like really bright days, like really energetic energy. We're going out, we're you know, it's sunny, it's nice. We can get out of the house. Like for me, summer is like the season where I can get out of the house and I don't feel like, oh God, I just feel like shit because it's so dark and gloomy and cold. And then there's the night, which is like hot, but you're tired and you're like, just like relaxing and trying to, you know, trying to vibe. So I think and I think this album has both of those. Like I think I don't know, like what was it? The night track for me, like Daughter of the Moon track 4 was very like summer nights for me. Very kind of languid. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's the one where I was like, oh no, I have to say something sounds like Twin Peaks. Because it does. Yeah, it's very like a little swung, but like that very low, like slinking, I sort of call it. Like like you're like moving like West Side Story Knife Gang is like moving through the streets or something. It's very ominous, very dark. Yeah, for sure. And then I think comes out of that though into this next track, which sounds to me much more like I think people want summer music to sound. That's the beginning of track 5, World of Light, which is also, I think, them putting their foot forward because that's the default track in the player on Bandcamp. It doesn't start at track 1. It starts at track 5 if you just don't change anything. And yeah, this beginning sounds very like Miami Vice summery to me.
Yeah.
A lot of like syncopated upbeat rhythms, like cool bass lines. It's just very summery. But as most things in this album, that only lasts for a little bit. And then through the middle, you start to get like kind of distorted vocal samples. And then it just continues to grow and kind of add on.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it slowly becomes more abstract and disjointed. There's like industrial sounds come in. So it's kind of interesting. It's kind of playing with that. Like there's such a difference between the beginning and the end of that track.
Yeah. Kind of erratic, like at times.
Mm-hmm.
It's things fall apart, you know, mm-hmm. Like it's really interesting. So, but yeah. And then I think you know what my favorite track is.
I have a guess. I think you really like track 6, which is the final track on the album, Quaternity, it's mm-hmm. called. And yeah, it's totally just a breakbeat or drum and bass track, whatever you want to call it.
I think I mentioned before on this podcast, I love drum and bass. Mm-hmm. It doesn't really qualify. I don't really consider drum bass haunted music at all. It's just like, let's just play, 200 beats per minute, boys. It's going to be great and have some great mm-hmm. ass soul singing. Maybe. I don't know. But drum bass is like daytime music for me. I listen to it during the day when I'm working. And this is really jazzy drum and bass kind of like, and it's really good. And I'm just like, what the fuck is this doing on this album? I'm not complaining. I'm just like, what? All right. Mm-hmm. I'm into it. I don't know. I don't see how it follows, but I don't care. Like,
that's right.
Yeah.
So I'm actually going to play a little bit right here just so we can say we played drum and bass samples. What's funny about that, what you just listened to, is I don't listen to a lot of drum and bass or any of this type of music. Mm-hmm. Yet, track 6, to me, is in some way the most nostalgic track for me. And here's why. It's because this is not as exciting as your World War II book story, but that type of music reminded me very much of a drummer I used to really like 10 years ago and then just kind of stopped following. And that's a guy, Jojo Mayer, who kind of was like, well, I'm really into this type of music, but I play drums. So what if I just got so good at drums, I could just play it for real, like on a live kit? And he had a band, Nerve, and some other projects. I'll put some in the album notes just as an example. But yeah, he did this band, Nerve, where he just played this type of stuff at these tempos on a live kit, and in some way much more complex than a lot of sequenced drums. I think I don't know. I just got tired of it or whatever. But I was thinking about going and looking up a bunch of Jojo Mayer videos after listening to this, because man, I used to be pretty into this. It was pretty interesting. So that's my drum and bass as nostalgia story, apparently.
Yeah. No, I would like to hear from the artist, not what were you thinking, but tell us more of how this, you went from, World of Light to Quaternity. Mm-hmm. And a great way to end an album too. Really, well, especially for an album that is very 70s kind of funky and prog rock a little bit. I don't know. And again, I heard Santana, kind of guitars in some of those parts. And then just to go all the way to 90s drum and bass, it's all right, great.
Yeah, I wonder if it's just an exploration of all the music they like in some sort of order, because there's at least from an inspiration standpoint, it does feel like there's a progression, because the first 2 tracks, like you're saying, are very 70s funk, wah guitar solos, horn solos, a little more conventional. And then it does kind of become darker into 80s, into industrial, into drum and bass. So it's
I don't really, I had not really thought about
it. It is kind of in order. I don't know if that's on purpose or just by chance. It could just be like, we were just jamming and having fun with it. And that's how it ended up, which is also interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a really interesting album, a really eclectic blend of different stuff. If you're into any sort of like prog, jazz, experimental, fusion type stuff, I think there's something here to listen to. I think it's at least worth trying out once. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening. Our next episode, we're going to be talking about Visual Signals, a vaporwave / signal wave zine, which has put out some issues and some other content. So we'll be diving into that. It looks fun. Don't forget, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/nightclerkradio. We have an active Discord community, and we do a bonus episode every month. Where we talk about all kinds of things, vaporwave and haunted music related. So we have over 14 or 15 episodes up at this point. So quite a bit if you need a backlog to binge. So, and if you have any questions or comments, please let us know in the comments of this. On Twitter, we're at Night Clerk Radio. I'm at Ross Payton. Birk is at Birk McBirkinson. We have a website, nightclerkradio.com. We have a Facebook page. Also, if you are listening to this on YouTube, let us know, like and comment and subscribe and all that jazz. And please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, whatever you use. Tell your friends, tell your enemies. Just tell the world about Night Clerk Radio. And thank you so much for listening. It means a lot when we hear from our community, especially. That's it for this episode. Hope you have a great summer. Listen to some great jams. Bye.